Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, May 12th, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we're going to be joined by Andy Kostka. He is one of the new Orioles beat writers over at the Baltimore Sun. We're going to talk about DL Hall's AAA debut on Tuesday night in Norfolk. We're going to talk a bit about the Orioles offense and how it's surging in May after a really, really tough April. And we'll learn a little bit about Andy, who's written some great stories so far for the Sun and continues his great Orioles coverage. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So on today's episode, recorded this, by the way, here on Wednesday afternoon. So as you're listening to this, the Orioles did play game 2 against the Cardinals. Hopefully it was a win. If it was a loss, well, they'll go for the series on Thursday. But we are going to be joined here by Andy Kostka. He is an Orioles beat writer for the Baltimore Sun, his first year on the O's beat, coming to us live from a Norfolk hotel at the moment. And Andy, first of all, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Always happy for an old friend.
Yeah, and so me and Andy, as people may know, go back to the Diamondback, the student newspaper at the University of Maryland. Spent some long days in that newsroom together. But now we're both covering the Baltimore Orioles. And, we'll get to the Orioles, Andy, but I had you on just kind of at a perfect timing as you're literally in Norfolk. You saw DL Hall make his AAA debut on Tuesday night. I know he didn't last very deep into the game. I don't think anyone really expected him to go 6 or 7 innings. I'm sure that wasn't the plan. But in general, Orioles fans saw a piece of him in spring training when he dominated that 1 inning. How do you kind of compare what he looked like Tuesday night versus, the 1 inning high velo show that he put on probably the last time most Orioles fans got to watch him pitch?
Yeah, well, I saw him in Aberdeen as well a couple of weeks ago. So I've seen him in person twice. And what I think stood out to me both times is that, yeah, he has that high velo fastball. He can touch triple digits. But I think the changeup is maybe the pitch that's improved the most just from where he was even last year. That pitch it made a lot of guys in high A look kind of silly, as can happen. And even last night for AAA, he was great. Slider was good, curveball was good. It's really those off-speed pitches that stood out to me most because I think, yeah, for a lefty starter throwing 100, that is pretty outstanding. But to be able to have the command of 3 other off-speed pitches, that could really make him a front-end starter at some point. Maybe soon, honestly. But it all kind of depends on. I expected him to go deeper in the game last night. Went 3 innings, 1 run, 2 walks, 2 hits, 4 strikeouts, I think it was. And 53 pitches. He in high A he pitched 54. In Double A last week he pitched 59. I kind of thought they would bump him up a little bit more, but he did have kind of a high stress second inning there. Maybe they just decided with the cold weather it was very blustery. I was a little cold. I'm sure they had a better idea. Like, hey, let's make sure he just does the last 17 pitches or whatever he wanted to do in the confines of the bullpen in the dugout or wherever they might do it. Because he's been at 4+1 is what he told me in Aberdeen. So he was a little bit below that, but we'll see if he can kind of stretch that pitch count up a little bit in the next coming weeks.
Yeah. And I think really the other question here is, everything you hear about DL Hall is high velocity, really good stuff, but it's, can the command get him to the big leagues? Can that command get him through 5-6 innings as a starter? And again, through 3 innings, you're not going to get the full picture, but this is what I want to ask everybody who watches him pitch. Like, what did he look like command wise? Because we know the stuff continues to be electric.
Yeah. First batter, he faced 3 pitches, 3 strikes. Goodbye. So that was pretty awesome. Struck out the second batter too. Then he walked the third. I think that's going to be the way it kind of goes for DL a little bit. He always has the potential. I know it was against the lefty. It was against the Player of the Month for the International League, that third at bat. So It's a difficult matchup. But he left a lot of fastballs outside the zone, especially off the plate, away from the lefty batter. And you kind of feel like maybe that's the one spot that he can throw it, he can really zip it in there. But if he cannot have consistent command of the zone, then you're always have that little nagging in the back of your head. I was talking to a scout in Aberdeen after he watched DL pitch, and the big question was reliever or starter. It is kind of always the big thing. And after watching him pitch in Aberdeen, that was high A, of course. That was his first affiliate start in almost a year, like 11 months or whatever it was. There was kind of a belief from him that, hey, this could be a starter, just the way that he commands his off-speed pitches. Yeah, well, DL, I mean, as long as he kind of keeps that strike zone, and the Orioles have done a pretty good job top to bottom of saying they want their pitchers to go, right after guys. They want that first strike, and they're going to assume that there's going to be more contact because of it, but they have 8 fielders behind the dish for a reason, so they can kind of deal with that contact. Again, with that heater, I mean, there's a lot of things you love, but I think it's really the off-speed pitches that impress me most, and it could make him a long-term starter.
Yeah, and obviously with him on the mound, and it was cool to see him get another start with Adley Rutschman behind the plate, of course. And we won't get into how Adley looked in 4 plate appearances and catching Tuesday night. Orioles fans have seen him plenty, but I wanted to talk more, before we move on to Orioles stuff about, I know you got to talk to these guys Tuesday night, and you wrote about this for the Sun on Wednesday, but just kind of what is the vibe, the feeling from, really the big 3, because Grayson, DL, and Adley are all together again. They all started the year, or they were all briefly together in AA last year. Grayson started the year in high A for a bit, but they're all back together in AAA. They're all one step away. And Orioles fans are pretty certain that we'll see Adley next week. Obviously, Grayson and DL Hall are a little further behind, but kind of what were they saying? What's the vibe of those 3? Because they know they're coming up this year, but there's probably still some question marks on when exactly that happens.
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks about when, especially with DL, you don't know his pitch count. I talked to Grayson and asked him specifically about how he feels with being stretched out, because he's been kind of limited to how many pitches, and he said he's absolutely ready. He wants to throw 100, 110 every 5th day, which is not going to happen. They're never going to let that happen at the AAA level. Even at the major league level, probably not ever going to happen. But Grayson feels ready. And then Adley, I mean, he's media trained enough now that he knows not to give me the juicy soundbite that I was really hoping for. But he, I think he could not, he hinted at the excitement as well. I mean, there's the top 3 prospects, according to Baseball America, for the Orioles organization are in Norfolk right now, and they're knocking on the door. And that's kind of what I wrote about last night. It was published this morning, Wednesday morning. That's, an exciting thing for the organization to have guys this close. And Adley could be up maybe the 16th, maybe the 20th. He said he had no idea when the timetable is, which is honestly probably 100% true. Give him a hint exactly of when the time frame is. But, there's definitely excitement there. I feel like, when I asked Adley about it, he was very like, oh, we only focus on the next game and like the very, right ahead of us. And, he's, that's just him, what he needs to say in the moment. When I asked Grayson about it, he admitted, he was like, yeah, those conversations happen all the time. When you have, it's impossible to have, those 3 up there. You have a guy like Nick Vespi, who's really throwing great. You have Kyle Stowers, Robert Newstrom's playing well this year. I mean, you have a lot of guys that are kind of on the verge of a major league debut. And yeah, those conversations are going to happen. They're natural to have happen. And, Grayson leaned into it and was like, yeah, that's the expectation. That's the goal. And of course, to get there, they have to perform at the AAA level. Before last night, entering, that was it, Tuesday, they went 3-9 on their last road trip. So, talent is there, but maybe the results aren't always there. And that's what Buck Britton was talking about to me. He was like, okay, yeah, we have a lot of guys and it's super exciting, but at the same time, you need to win games, and good baseball is going to get you success at the AAA level, and it's going to get you noticed for the major league level. So it's important not to completely bypass the tides and remember that, hey, like, yeah, okay, you can be a stud at this level, but to kind of get to that next level, you have to perform and eventually you'll get there. But right now it's really what you do at this level. But there's excitement. Absolutely, there's excitement. And I don't think no matter how much Adley wants to pretend that he's a robot and does not notice what's happening around him, it's there and it's happening. And I think even he would notice it.
Yeah, it's funny to talk about like the media training, because obviously Grayson and DL were both drafted at a high school. They didn't kind of go through that college media training process. Adley played 3 years at one of the best programs in the country, won a national championship, was going to the College World Series, obviously was dealing with SIDs, who I know you know a lot about as well. And yeah, he's been through the ringer in terms of what to say and what not to say. So you're obviously going to get a little bit less out of him, and that is kind of what we expect. But we're going to be back with Andy Kostka talking more about the Major League team in just a second. But first, got to tell you about one of our sponsors today, and that is Athletic Greens. And it's a product that many use every day because they want better gut health, more energy, optimized immune system. It really can help with many different things. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. And, it's lifestyle friendly. You can incorporate AG1 into really any diet, and it costs you less than $3 a day. And you're investing in your health, and, it's cheaper than going and getting a coffee every day, which I'm sure a lot of people work into the budget as well. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/MLB Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So we're here with Andy Kostka of the Baltimore Sun, who is joining us from Norfolk after watching the Tides play in their first game of the series this week, DL Hall on the mound. But we're going to switch things to the Major League level here, because the Orioles got another victory in St. Louis on Tuesday night. We're hoping, as you listen to this, they got another victory Wednesday night in St. Louis. But they're playing good baseball, won 7 of the last 10. And we know the pitching has been great. Kyle Bradish dominated. But the other change, which I know you tweeted about this a couple days ago, about the difference between just the runs scored in April and May, has been ridiculous. I mean, the Orioles essentially couldn't buy a hit with a runner in scoring position in the month of April. Not like they're lighting the world on fire in that sense, but it's gotten a lot better. So what have you noticed just between April and May? And it's not a clean cutoff, like, May 1st, the Orioles started winning again. But in general, you look at the numbers, and the O's have, at the very least, started to pick up more hits. I mean, you can't really measure this, but they've been a little more clutch probably in the month of May, and that's helped them out.
Yeah, they got that. People love to say on Twitter
exactly.
This month. But they've scored 45 runs through 11 days of May and 62 in April. So they will certainly bypass what you, knock on wood, they should bypass the 62 from last month. But I asked Ryan Mountcastle about that specifically on Monday, and he really thought, like, hey, there's just balls are landing. I mean, that's like the way baseball kind of goes, and I'll give him that. Like, there were some hard hit balls, especially from Trey Mancini. Like, I mean, how many 100-mile-per-hour exit velo did he have that found gloves instead of the outfield grass or the seats? So it's definitely a legit claim that sometimes balls fall finally, and there's a little bit of luck that goes your way. But I think more of it goes probably to what they've been able to do just in terms of plate discipline, not pressing so much to the plate. I think the at-bat that really stood out to me, the 2 outs, 1-2 count from Ryan Mountcastle, 2 guys on in that 5th inning. He fouled off 2 knuckle curves and a fastball, then took a slide for a ball, and then he poked a knuckle curve into left field for an RBI single. And I think that's the at-bat that maybe a month ago we didn't see. Maybe they were pressing a little bit. Maybe he swings to that slider because Instead, he laid off that slider and got the pitch. It was a low knuckle curve, but he got what he needed on it. Poked it into left. I mean, that was a really good at bat, and they scored 4 runs in that Monday matinee game. That I'll take noon starts all the time, if you ask me. I mean, that's great for me. It's awesome. But yeah, they scored 4 runs with 2 outs in that inning. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if there's a stat cast for the clutch gene, but it certainly maybe feels like they're a little bit more clutch this month than last month. The running and scoring position numbers are better. Maybe some of that comes down to what Mountcastle said about, stuff just is finding gaps finally. Maybe there's more to do. They're not pressing as much with 2 strikes. They're not saying, oh, I need to expand the zone here. They have a little bit more plate discipline. The swing decisions might be better in terms of not swinging at the first strike they see, but waiting for, later in the count. I mean, I think those things probably have greater weight than just luck, because, not to bash on Mountcastle there. I think there's a little bit more to it than luck. And so I think that's probably the biggest adjustment we've seen. But yeah, I mean, the numbers are showing it. Another 5 runs last night, a great pitching outing from Bradish in his 3rd start. So yeah, a lot of promising signs there.
And then, I know you've written about this a little bit, but how much insight do you get into, the Orioles have not 1, but 2 new hitting coaches this year. And we know it's a lot about their approach and swing decisions. And between Matt Borg-Schulte, who came from the minors, coming over to the Orioles organization from Minnesota, and then you have Ryan Fuller, who gets the promotion from the Orioles minor leagues. What kind of sense do you have of what they've tried to install, or at least, how much these guys are buying in? Because you have some players who literally worked with Ryan Fuller in the minors, and it's probably much easier for those guys. But you also have some vets like Rougned Odor and Robinson Chirinos coming in and saying, we've got these 2 hitting coaches who never played in the big leagues. And, there's a chance that those guys could kind of push that away. So kind of how have you seen that develop in the first month and a half of the season?
Yeah, I think people have bought in a lot. I think probably the best example I had is I was talking to Anthony Santander about this. And, he was saying that, something so subtle as in batting practice, and they do this now top to bottom in the organization. They have a bucket behind home plate with a medicine ball sitting on the bucket, and that's the go zone. If the ball in batting practice hits that medicine ball, that's a player's go zone, and they should have swung. And if it doesn't, they watch a couple pitches in. If it doesn't hit that go zone, they just make that mental note of like, hey, that could be called a strike. Could legit, you never know, what the strike zone might be that night. It could be called a strike, but that's a pitch you want to spit on. You don't want that pitch because it wasn't in your go zone. So I think the adoption of a go zone and like really locking in on where do I do the most damage, and understanding that for player to player has really helped players. Like, I mean, Santander loves it. I mean, his batting average isn't lighting the world on fire, but his on base percentage has been very, eye popping this early season. He's been on base. I think he started the season with like 20 some games, and since then he had 1 game that he didn't get on base, and has been on base pretty much every single other one. He's been getting on base a lot, and a lot of it comes down to that go zone. But yeah, I think people are buying in. A lot of the guys that were in the minors, it's maybe a little bit easier for them. But as you said, with Odor and Chirinos and some of the other veteran bats that were in the minor leagues, they aren't lighting the world on fire here. But I think people have kind of said, okay, yeah, let's trust this situation. And, if it's working for other people in the line, can it work for me, kind of thing. So, yeah, and I think it is working. You see it, and people like the go zone idea. Definitely.
Yeah, and for Santander, right now as they go into play on Wednesday, tied for the American League lead in walks with a player you may have heard of named Mike Trout. So that's a pretty good spot on the leaderboard for Santander to be. We'll be back for a little bit more with Andy Kostka, the Baltimore Sun, in just a second. But first, got to talk about betonline.net, because if you had bet on the Orioles having 13 wins at this point in the season, I mean, even at 13-17, people might have thought you were crazy. But they're playing some pretty good baseball. You can probably get some good odds on the Orioles over at betonline.net, your one-stop shop for all your sports wagering needs. Now, you can, of course, place your bets and find all the lines you need, but you can also get live score updates at betonline.net. You can get your latest injury news, latest sports news in general, and you can listen to podcasts just like this one to prepare you for not just the MLB season, but of course the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA playoffs as well. And you can get all that, but you can also at betonline.net play your favorite Vegas casino games right from the comfort of your own couch. They really have it all, everything for the sports gambler. So again, head over to betonline.net for all your sports wagering needs. That's betonline.net, where the game starts. So we're here with Andy Kostka of the Baltimore Sun. And Andy, we've been talking AAA, we've been talking Major League Orioles, but wanted to kind of pose a question to you. You know, your first year on the Orioles beat here, and you've written some good stories for the Sun so far, and kind of taking a different viewpoint of things, diving different ways into stories. Just wanted to ask, what's your favorite Orioles story that you have written so far? Because there's been some interesting angles that you've taken so far, as you've been known to do in your journalism career.
Well, thank you. I think my favorite actually might be the binocular story I did when they get on base and they do the binoculars. It just was kind of funny. The first person I asked about that was Trey Mancini, and I walk up to him like, "Hey, like, what's the deal with, like, when you guys do this? Like, what's going on?" And he was like, I don't know, man. It's like something to do with video games. Like, go ask one of the young guys. And I was like, okay, like, I'll go ask one of the young guys. So I walked over to Mount Castle, and he explained that it was it's Call of Duty, and they call it a precision airstrike. And the funny thing is, it's actually Rougned Odor that's really a big proponent of all this. You know, he helped start the home run chain as well, which I wrote about. Cedric Mullins is big in Call of Duty as well. So when they play Warzone, that's kind of where that whole binocular thing comes from. But I think that one might be my favorite. Just as like and I like the stories that maybe aren't in a little bit, under the radar. I know that everyone saw it. Nobody had asked. I feel like those are probably my favorite stories too.
Yeah, and even the one you wrote too about just kind of the wall coming into play as well, and just different stuff that you've written. Just the quote from Mount Castle. We know players are feeling like that. It's going to take them a little while to adjust to it as well. And when you have a ball be an inch away from a 2-run homer that might have kind of changed the outcome of that game on Sunday, obviously it's going to get to you as well. But before we wrap up, Andy, I kind of know the Andy Kostka story because I was working with you at the start of your journalism career. But kind of what were the last couple of steps, just so people know who Andy Kostka is as they read your work. What were the last couple of steps in the journalism career before getting here? Because I know it was covering a good amount of baseball, but at a different level at your last stop as well.
Yeah, well, my career path is probably less interesting than those of the prospects I've been covering lately. But before this, I was working down in Starkville, Mississippi, where Jordan Westberg made his mark. Covered Mississippi State, all sports there: football, women's basketball, men's basketball, baseball, for the Clarion Ledger, USA Today. So that was a good time. I bonded a little bit when I talked to Westberg a little while ago about what bars in Starkville are the best, and there's not many options. So we were pretty much on the same on the same wavelength there. But yeah, before Mississippi, I was with the Washington Times in DC, and then before that, I was a couple internships here and there. I was in Pittsburgh for a little bit, and then the Diamondback, which is the student newspaper at University of Maryland, which is where I met you and a lot of other great reporters out of the Diamondback, including many at the Baltimore Sun. So yeah, if you look around the Baltimore Sun newsroom, there's a good chance they're from the Diamondback.
Yeah, it's certainly a feeder. So last thing, you're in the ballpark now, and obviously you're traveling around to some of these minor league sites as well. But you've been in the area for a while, obviously before coming back to Baltimore to cover the Orioles beat. But best part of covering the Orioles right now, this can be the view you get from the press box. This can be food in the press box you get. This can just be where you live. What's the number one A+ thing with moving back to this beat?
They have a soft serve ice cream machine in the press box media cafeteria, and the cafeteria closes an hour after first pitch. So it's like second, third inning. I look at the clock. I'm like, oh, it's 7:45. I can run up there real quick, or sprint upstairs, get a little bit of soft serve, run back down to my seat. That's like the second, third inning pick me up that I need to get me through the game. So that might be the best part. The view is I mean, Camden Yards is amazing. It's been a lot of fun. There's a lot of great parts of this job. It's not to trivialize it with soft serve, but soft serve is always a fun treat. As well as love living in Baltimore as well. So good things, but the soft serve might be the top of it.
Yeah, people are talking so much about the pitch clock. The real clock that's important is the soft serve clock in the press box. Yes. But Andy, thank you so much for joining us to talk a little AAA and your trip to Norfolk as you sit there now in a Norfolk hotel. And we're happy that the Wi-Fi got much better early in this interview as well from your Norfolk hotel, and talk a little Orioles as well. And we look forward to continuing to read your stuff over at the Baltimore Sun, where you can check out all of Andy's work covering the Baltimore Orioles and other things for the Sun's sports section. But Andy, thank you so much again for making your first appearance on the Locked On Orioles podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, so that was Andy Kostka of the Baltimore Sun. We'll be back for one more episode tomorrow previewing Orioles and Tigers. Scott Bentley of Locked On Tigers joins us to talk about the upcoming weekend series and also talk, the Tigers were supposed to be a lot better this year and a year ahead of the Orioles. But why have the O's played so much better than Detroit? We'll break that down on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.